Next up, we have Lucy, who's going to talk about inbreeding in crows, which will be really fascinating. Right after that, we have Jenny and then Dasomi. Okay, welcome, Lucy.
So inbreeding is defined as the mating of closely related individuals. And we're all really familiar, both scientists and just all of us alike, that inbreeding isn't great. And we know this because related individuals will often carry similar genomes. And this means that they can often carry these hidden or recessive traits or genes that they don't express, but they're damaging. And when two related individuals mate, they pass both of them pass their genes down to their offspring, and the offspring has a higher chance of expressing these deleterious traits. So what are these negative effects? We know that inbreeding can cause decreased fertility, decreased survival, a decrease in the immune system. And in humans, we're familiar with the fact that inbreeding causes a decrease in the cognitive function. But we aren't really sure how inbreeding affects cognition in non-human animals. So this is what I wanted to ask in my thesis. So I hypothesized that inbreeding will impair cognitive function of the American crow because of the expression of deleterious recessive alleles, or genes. So to test this, my colleagues and I ran 3 cognitive tests. My first one up top is the string test. This is a problem-solving test, and our birds had to learn to retrieve a food reward from the end of a string. Our second test is our associative learning test, in which our birds had to associate a food reward with a certain color. And our final test is our spatial learning test, in which our birds had to figure out the location of food rewards. To look at inbreeding, we extracted DNA from blood samples, and we measured a homozygosity by loci measurement. And this basically told us how inbred the birds were. A higher score meant more inbred, a lower score meant less inbred. And so from this, we determined that birds with a score of 0.35 or higher were inbred. And you'll see this come into play with my graphs up here. We actually found that there was no relationship between inbreeding and cognition. So for our problem-solving string test, we found that there was no difference in the inbreeding index between the birds that failed and the birds that succeeded. For our associative learning test, we found that there was no difference in the percent success of our inbred and outbred birds. And for our spatial learning test, we found that there was no difference in the errors made by our inbred and outbred birds. So this is interesting because this is not what we figured to be true. This is not what I hypothesized, and this is not what we know to be true in humans. However, if you'll remember earlier, I mentioned that the inbreeding can cause a decrease in the immune system. And this is important because the Townsend lab, my lab, has done a lot of research into how inbreeding can cause a decrease in the immune system and leaves individuals more prone to disease. We also know in my lab and in other labs have looked at the fact that disease can cause a decrease in cognitive function. So we can string these ideas together and say that inbreeding does, in fact, have an impact on cognition, even if it is indirect, through disease. And this is something that we hope to look at in the future. Thank you.